Let's bring on Matt Park. Matt, you go back to the beginning of the season, they almost beat / should have beat Houston. They did beat Tennessee. They were competitive with Kansas. And all of that was without Donnie. And now, you fast forward and, they're down 30-plus at UNC before coming back. They lose by 37 to Duke. Why did we go from that to this? And this team's been non-competitive against some really good teams of late.
I don't know if I've got a grand explanation other than to say it's sports. If it was robots and everything was supposed to be the same every time or react consistently, based on some mathematical formula or whatever, then we probably wouldn't be as interested in it over the long haul. It's human performance. Some days you have it, some days you don't. And the teams that have it the best, the most consistently are the ones that win. That's why they play the games. I think the alarming thing really is they played pretty well in that stretch without Donnie Freeman, who we all would, I guess there's an argument to be made now that Nate Kings is a more consistent contributor, but Donnie Freeman, for all intents and purposes, is the best player and the best NBA prospect right now, pro prospect, let's put it that way. And they played without him and, showed their top end performance over that period was better than what we've seen in recent games here. I think a lot's been made, and probably justifiably, of the fact they've been buried on the road against two good teams. North Carolina's good, Duke is really good, and it's been an eyesore. There's no way around it. I tend to think this is true in all things. You're never as good as you look on your best day or as bad as you look on your worst day or somewhere in between. And I think this team has shown a great degree of variation.
Is it fair to just ignore the SMU and Cal games? Did the Duke game just completely wash those away?
I wouldn't ignore them. I mean, again, we all know the math here about what is in terms of making the tournament and all that and how long a shot it is. So for that, they didn't really help you that much. But you came back and you won games at home against two teams that are in the middle of the pack or the lower middle of the pack in the conference, and going on the road against a Duke team that may play for the national championship. It's just a totally different realm, So why? To me, the results there, win and loss, are about as expected. I think they were expected to beat Cal. SMU was kind of a toss-up, or maybe a little worse, and they ended up winning that game. And going to Duke, they were a huge underdog and could play Duke 10 more times and probably might not win any of them. So the fact that it played out that way, to me, is not a surprise.
You brought up the name Donnie Freeman. When you look at his season, how do you kind of assess what Donnie has been for this team this year? It's been kind of mixed reviews, I would say, up and down. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, Donnie's got a lot to offer. I think it has shown that he's got a long way to go to be where he wants to be. Let's just say this in a blanket statement related to past good players and the next wave of good players and what have you. It's really hard to make the NBA. To make it for a day, you're pretty good. And to sustain it for any period of time is really impressive. And what I'm seeing from Donnie right now is a guy who may be a pro or an NBA player someday, but right now is showing he's a ways off of that. And that's fine. He's a sophomore in college. He's got time to grow into it, and hopefully it comes from him someday. But I would think if he's truly draft worthy or what have you this time around, he wouldn't have the ball taken away from him by guards. And that's happening here and now. He has a lot of pressure on him, I think. I think he feels it. I think one of the thoughts about having him come in off the bench that one time was, hey, we don't all have to defer to Donnie at the start of the game. Let's kind of get things rolling and then see how he mixes in. He's not necessarily a fast starter. But he's still at this level, can be and is a very good player. I think he brings a lot to the table. He's got a lot of strengths, a lot of skills, room to grow and develop, obviously. And that's why I think you see some fluctuation. Cameron Boozer is on a different level, and that kind of matchup is going to be a problem. And it's not just for Donnie; it's for everybody that's played Cameron Boozer this year. So I think a lot's expected of Donnie, that because he is so highly thought of and has the background and the high recruiting ranking and all that he's supposed to be some all-conference stud in his sophomore year, and it looks like he's just off that right now.
I'm going to ask you about another individual player, Nathan George. Obviously there's some games left to be played, but a lot of people are looking forward to next season. Regardless of who the leader of the program is next season, would you want Nathan George back?
That's going to be a decision for the coaches, be they existing, internal, external, what have you. Again, he's got pedigree, and you can see the potential on the top end. I don't know that he benefits, from moving on or, being dismissed. It's kind of like, if the point guard is the quarterback on a basketball team, it's like putting yourself in position of these people we talk about with Sam Darnold and Hurts, and you have a different offensive coordinator every year for 8 years. It's not putting yourself in position to succeed, because I think that's what we have to. If you have to look at what did George, what's his step back, if any, from last year? How did he lead the conference in assists last year on a just okay team, if that, maybe not a great team, to this year should be on theoretically a better team, and he doesn't have quite the same numbers. Then does it have to do with the style of offense or his approach, or he's had a slump or that type of thing? So I think the new coach has to decide, if there is a new coach, or if it's the current coaching staff, whatever. You got to decide, does this person fit what we want to do? I don't think he's earned a boot, to move on from him. I think, he may have been a reach in the portal, maybe, but it's hard to say. We talked about this off the air before. You're lying to yourself. If you didn't think you wanted the conference leader in assists, it was all ACC and from Toronto, you didn't want him coming in, you're lying to yourself. So if you're going to claim now, hey, this didn't work out because he's not Sherman Douglas, well, it's just human performance. It's the nature of the beast. I think 9 out of 10 people evaluating the same situation, if they had the opportunity to bring Nathan George in, would have done it.
You use the quarterback comparison, but he tends to make Brett Favre type decisions when he is actually Sam Darnold. It's kind of head scratching.
I think you're, and how and why. I mean, how many times a game do we go, right? And it happens, and I how you coach that out of a guy, I don't know. It's not from a lack of trying. The thing they've worked on with Nathan George, and I think this has been publicized, is, and this really is probably true for all the guys, but let's play it snappier. Let's make the decisions quicker. When right, wrong, or indifferent, at least be decisive. When you're coming down the floor and you get to that free throw line, you got to know what you're doing with it. And the intended recipient of the pass needs to be there and locked in and make eye contact. We can't be just just because William Kyle or even Soiree, for that matter, have extraordinary reach and leaping ability, Donnie Freeman, just because that works here and there, we can't be willy-nilly just throwing the ball around the yard. And then there are those head scratchers when it's a pass, bounced off somebody's shins or something to that effect. So it happens. He's trying like heck, he's doing the best he can. And is he going to be all conference this year? No, he's not. And it's the way it goes. It's just the hand they were dealt with. And I think they're trying to improve it over time. And what you see is what you get.
This is obviously a time of transition up there at the university. New chancellor, new AD coming in, potentially a new head basketball coach. Do you have a feel for the timeline with a chancellor and with a new AD?
I don't specifically, other than to say, I think you can be constantly working on this. I think the chancellor part of it, and this is with no internal knowledge really, nobody said anything to me and I haven't asked. Just because it hasn't been publicized doesn't mean that they aren't really close to the end of that. I'm sure they're closer to the end than is publicly known. Then the athletic director part of it, you can get on that right now. And a number of the candidates, we know there's one candidate who's on staff right now, at least one, and there are other candidates that aren't ADs at other places, so they don't have quite the same extraction, in terms of having to tie up affairs at another place. They all have other jobs, of course, but you can start working on their ideas and identifying that and talk to people about who they, what they think of the basketball program, and that's all part of I guarantee you that's part of getting to know somebody as a prospective AD. What do you think's going on here, football and basketball? What's your overall observation of Syracuse's position in this whole thing? What's your intention of the direction, and what are your feelings? That's how you decide on who you hire for that position. And so that's starting the ball rolling already on an evaluation of this basketball season, if and when a change gets made and that type of thing, and then how they go from there.
I know that you listen to the show sometimes. You talk about that, and so I'm sure you've heard the conversations around Mike Hopkins, Gerry McNamara, when their names come up. Some people love the idea. Some people absolutely hate the idea. What would you say to someone, a fan who is very much turned off by the idea of Hop or Gerry being the next head coach here?
Yeah, I would just want to hear more. I want to have a conversation about it. I want to hear, tell me why. I've heard Paulie phrase it, you don't want to have happen to them what's happened to Red. And I get that. I do. I think you don't want to have back-to-back sons of the program sputter. Because, I think if the cards were laid out differently, it could have been more successful for Red. The fact of the matter is it hasn't worked out that great to this point. What I don't really get is just the blank assumption or understanding that anybody who's ever met, I've seen it posted, nobody who's ever met Jim Boeheim should work here, or that anyone is tainted. We're really only talking about two people. I mean, for all intents and purposes, two people. You named them, okay? Gerry McNamara and Mike Hopkins. You want to tell me that Gerry McNamara hasn't shown you enough in 2 years? Okay, that's a reason. You want to tell me Mike Hopkins wasn't successful enough at Washington? Okay, that's a reason. Just because they have familiarity here, or just because they played college basketball under Jim Boeheim, to me is not a disqualification. I don't get why that computes. So I'd have to hear more about people who have that opinion. I'd have to hear more about what they say. I think you have to pick up the phone and talk to them. Even just hear them out. Maybe they'll tell you they're not interested. Maybe Gerry says, it's not my time. Maybe Hop says, no, I think I'm closer to a NBA head coaching job, or I'd rather do something different. I'm not going to back away from it. Time has passed, but when Mike Hopkins left, I said that if he wanted to come back, I would pick him up and drive him. I was being dramatic because he was in Seattle. I think very highly of both of those guys, and I think they would bring a lot positive to the table. Are they the only ones? Absolutely not. So I think you have to cast a wide net. And I think we've talked about this before, but I think there's a lot of different people you talk to, a lot of constituents, get a sense of what all these different type of people can bring to the table, and have, I'm sure it'll be a committee decision, have a lot of smart people in the room that can help make the best decision for the future of the program and for the school. But would not absolutely dismiss them out of hand. No way.
Matt, this crossed my mind yesterday, and I'm hoping it's not true. Is it possible that maybe Jim Boeheim was just that good and did something in Syracuse? That maybe can't be replicated?
I wouldn't say it can't be replicated, but he was that good. I think people don't understand the challenges and limitations and what he did. And I love the idea, he stayed on too long. He wanted to coach his kids still playing in the NBA. So, and it's hard to get to the NBA. And he must have done something right there. But it is hard. It's hard to win in a lot of places, and this is one of them. And the idea even to sustain it's very difficult. I think going back to the previous question, is there a supposition that Boeheim is controlling Autry or the program now like it's a puppet show? And this is somehow his doing, because I don't sense that that's happening. I know he has keys to the gym, and I've seen him at practice. What I see, he comes in, he watches, and he walks out. But he was really good, and he put the place on the map. We're going to honor the 1975 guys this year. That's what turned this program from being a cute little public school, or private school rather, in the Northeast, playing St. Bonaventure and Niagara and what have you, and put it on the map to play in a national level, the forerunner of the Big East and all of that. And under Jim Boeheim, it exploded into something different. Doesn't mean it couldn't have with somebody else, but it did because he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, well said, Matt. All right, we got to run. Have a good show tonight and good broadcast Saturday, and we'll see you inside the Dome Saturday.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.
All right, Matt Park joining us here on the show.
A lot of people getting on Matt for saying that Buddy Boeheim was an NBA player. He is currently on the roster of the...
Yeah, he's got a two-way deal.
He's on OKC's roster right now. And even if he's just in the G League, get the hell out of here with that take. He's just in the... That means he was good enough to play at Syracuse. Can we just stop? Buddy Boeheim was a great basketball player. Thank you.
All right, we'll wrap things up next on ESPN Radio.